to summarizing what we know so far. We are Advocates for Children. My name is Liliana Diaz-Pedrosa. I am the director of the Advocates for Children Parent Center, and joining me are two superstars from Advocates for Children, Kim Madden, our director of family services, and our Zoom master, Isabella Reiki, who is our social communication manager. So two important things before we get started. The first is that we have the Q&A feature in Zoom available for you to ask us questions. We may answer those questions live, or we may answer those questions in writing, depending on what we're going to be doing. We don't have all the answers as of right now, but we'll try to give you as much information as we can. We also want to hear what you've been hearing, and if you've received information that you're confused about or want some clarification about, we can try to do that, but also we'd like to know what you've been hearing during this process. We will drop some information into the chat box. The chat box is really not going to be available to you other than to archive some of the links that we are going to be using for you to have. You will receive a copy of this PowerPoint presentation and any materials that we might wish to share at a later time. I think we have that covered. We'll be waiting for a few more minutes to allow participants to come in. And yes, the PowerPoint will be shared with you. Okay. And so once again, welcome to Summarizing What We Know So Far with Advocates for Children. Again, my name is Liliana Diaz-Pedrosa, and joining us will be Kim Madden, our Director of Family Services, who will also be doing a presentation, and Isabella Reiki, our Communications Manager, who will be the invisible hand that makes everything work in the background. Please enter your questions in the Q&A, and we will try to answer as we go through, or we will send you information later on. And again, we will send a PowerPoint. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I can already see some questions in, which is great. We're going to try to do, I think Liliana just said this, but we are going to try to answer them as we can. A lot of these, like the one that just popped up, we will answer in the presentation. So, you know, it's up to you. If you're worried about forgetting it, you can put it in now, and then we will, you know, try to get to everything as we go through it. We are expecting a lot of people today, so, and you know, we are going to try to cover a lot of the basics. We did look, I know a lot of people sent in questions ahead of time, and so that's wonderful. It really helped us tailor our presentation. And all the three questions that have been asked already in the Q&A, we are aware of. Some of the questions, to be truly honest, we don't have the answers to. We are going to give you the answers that we have to date, and then also tell you how to ask and how to advocate. Obviously, this is something that is new for the DOE, and we've been asking a lot of questions at Advocates for Children and trying to find out a lot of the same answers that you have. So we'll go through them, you know, as we're going through the presentation as much as possible. We are going to have a break in the middle for questions, and so we'll try to get to them there. And we'll have a break at the end as well. And we are going to try to cover a whole bunch of different topics. I can already see there's a few questions about students with disabilities, and we will have a section on students with disabilities as well. Okay, and should we get started, Liliana?
That's Kim Madden, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Liliana introduced me. Yeah, I'm Kim Madden. I should apologize. I am having some tech issues. I hope I don't freeze and my audio keeps working. But yeah, that's, I guess, a Zoom phenomena. If we were at the IFC office, there could be drilling upstairs. It's the equivalent of that. So welcome, everybody. And I guess we will get started. Liliana already said this, but it is recorded. It will be up on our YouTube site within a day or two, and we will send to everyone who signed in, we'll send a copy of the PowerPoint. There's a lot of hyperlinks in the PowerPoint, meaning a text that's underlined. You can click on it and get to a website. Obviously, you can't click on it right now, but when we send it out, you will be able to.
All right, okay. So while we wait to for some other folks to join in, let's launch a poll just to see who's here. and then we'll get into today's training and who we are. But we really want to know who's here so we can tailor the information to you guys. I'll give the poll about a minute or less. And we'll get started. So while and I see there's some people still coming in, so I repeat, this is summarizing what we know so far with Advocates for Children. The poll is now up to see who's here. And as soon as I get the go ahead, we'll continue.
Yeah, and then I think, Liliana, we should do the last two polls too on who is here in terms of what are the, tell us a little bit about the student you're interested in summarizing for. If they have a disability, if they speak another language, we have that poll, and then also what grade level. So I think it would be great, given the large number of people, it'd be great to get that information out early so that if it turns out we have almost all elementary school, we can focus on that, or et cetera.
Okay, so then let's launch the next poll Isabella, when you're ready. All right, first poll is over. And now, look at that, lots of parents, a good number of educators and other professionals. But for the most part, parents, welcome parents. We'll be focusing then on you. And now.
And Liliana and I are both also parents who were trying to figure out the summer for our kids. So we can relate a lot to why you might sign up for this.
Quite a bit. Do we want to do population first? Let's do population first. Yeah, okay. So this is a poll just to let us know who's here, what applies to your child. Select all that apply, 10-month IEP or 504 plan, 12-month IEP, mandated for summer school, general education, so promotion endowed or another mandate, in temporary housing, multilingual learner.
And if it doesn't apply to you, that's fine. It's okay.
And if it doesn't, then it's okay. You can ignore, but we're multilingual learners, so that's me. And again, I see some people are still coming in. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for indulging our polls. Okay, so some more people are coming in. So the faster you guys answer the poll, I promise you the faster it is that we can move on to the next. And here it is. We have a lot of 10-month, actually a good mix. Look, 10-month IEPs, 12-month IEPs. So we'll have a focus on special education for those who replied, and a few multilingual learners. This is good. Thank you. And finally, what grade level is your student? Multiple choice, K through 5, pre-K, 6 to 8, middle school, and 9 to 12. Last one. Okay, why don't we go to, while we wait, when we go to the next slide, today's training?
Sure.
Okay, so today's training, we're going to go over what is Advocates for Children, what is summarizing, some of the pieces that you can expect, when will it be open, the registration process. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on it. Also, a lot of time on students with disabilities, problem solving, and general resources. We'll have some time for questions, although we encourage you to send us your questions as they come up. Okay, so we have some pre-K, majority are elementary school students, like my kids, middle school, and then some high school. Okay, thank you so much for this information. And let's get started. So Advocates for Children, for those of you who do not know us, is an independent agency. We're not affiliated with the Department of Education. We protect the rights of all New York City students. We focus exclusively on education rights for all New York City students. We have a bunch of free services, such as our helpline, which runs 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4. And although we are remote, we are answering questions all the time. You can also email us at info@advocatesforchildren.org if you have a question late at night or when our helpline is not open. We will return your message during business hours, Monday through Friday. We offer free legal services to families, New York City families, low income. And we have tons and tons of guides and resources at advocatesforchildren.org about pretty much anything you can think of. We offer free workshops and trainings. We have a whole bunch of webinars that are archived on our YouTube page. You can go and see some of the pieces that you may be curious about. And we also work on policy advocacy and impact litigation. Now, let's talk about summer rising. All right, so what is summer rising? So summer rising is New York City's, that's the question, it's New York City's COVID summer program. It is a hybrid of academic supports and instruction and free time. So think of it as a hybrid summer camp with summer school. It is not mandated. It is a free summer program for all New York City residents, including those who do not attend New York City public schools. It includes meals, breakfast and lunch, and upon request, afternoon snack. You do need to request afternoon snacks. And it's a collaboration between the New York City Department of Education and the Department of Youth and Community Development, which is DYCD. The Department of Education will offer a morning program with the DYCD programming in the afternoon, partnering with CBOs, community-based organizations, to offer activities such as field trips, outdoor fun, social emotional development and support, so social and enrichment activities for K through 8. Now, high school will offer instruction as well as age-appropriate supports, social and emotional supports, recreation, exploration, fun, and transition or employment programs such as we'll talk a little bit about that later, internships and other support and other opportunities for students' development based on what the child might need. The program is in person and full-time. I know that there were some questions about whether or not you could do part-time programming. The Department of Education expects the program to run 5 days a week from in the morning with the Department of Education, in the afternoon with the CBO, the community-based organization partner, but they expect students to attend full-time. We'll talk a little bit more.
Although you do have the option to attend just the DOE, or I don't think you can just attend the CBO, but for some of the programs, you do have the option to just attend the DOE program. Yep. I'm sorry to jump in, Liana. There's a question that keeps coming up in the chat. I'm sorry, in the Q&A, and I think that we don't have that in here. But a lot of people are asking if their child is articulating, like, so they're moving into middle school or moving into high school. Do they apply with the 8th grade program or the 9th grade program, with the 5th grade program or the 6th grade program? That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. What I would suggest is contact your current school, so the 5th or the 8th grade program. Ask what they have. If you already have accepted at the middle or high school program, you can call and ask them as well. I don't think they've put out that information. Typically, I would think that they would. But there's no typical with this. What am I saying? If they've never done it before, I think a lot of times they might say the school that knows you best is the one where you should go. But it is something where I think there might be options. So I would ask it both. So that's a great question and an example of one that we don't totally have the answer to. Another one that is coming up a lot is not only can you go for part of it, but what if you miss a few weeks? What if you want to do one in August? We don't know the answers to those because it's brand new. I think you're going to have to contact the school and the CBO to find out. And the other big one that we'll give our best stab at is when will I know? As a parent myself, usually I have summer sewn up by now, or at least I feel like I have a lot of options. It's a lot harder this year. And this is a lot of people, I think the majority of people have not heard yet. So if you're in that boat, you're not alone. And we don't have, the DOE, as far as I know, has not put out a hard stop answer that you will find out by X date. Ask at your school, ask the CBO as much as possible. That we have heard some people are hearing, when they can expect to hear. And it's varied because some people have gotten a response in a day and other people have been told, we're going to get back to you in a few weeks. So we'll cover one date that we have a guess at, but those are great questions. Keep them coming, but that's our answers so far.
All right. Okay. All right, so we've gotten questions also about remote learning this summer. So the Department of Education is offering live in-person instruction and remote learning only if you have a mandated summer program. So if you have a promotion in doubt or you have mandated summer school. If you have a 12-month IEP program, you have the option of using remote learning. And in high school, it is left up to the school. So it is not a guarantee that you will have remote learning for high school. It's a possibility depending on the program that you're seeking and the community needs. Okay, we can go to the next one. What can you expect for health and safety of protocols? Pretty much the same as you have seen at the Department of Education. Social distancing and masks indoors will continue. We expect that to continue for a while. You will have access to nursing supports and telehealth center. This does not mean, however, that there is a guarantee that there's going to be an actual nurse on the site, only that you'll have access to nursing support and telehealth. You can expect mandatory periodic COVID-19 testing, and there will be more details about the specific programming at the site coming up. So whether or not children are going to get mask breaks, or if they're going to be, if they're going to be allowed to be maskless if outdoors. That information we don't have, and it is more likely than not to be left up to the school to design what it is that they need to look at. But expect there to be masks during the time that the student is at the Summer Rising program, both in the CBO and at the Department of Education programming. All right. So when is it? So for kindergarten through 5th grade, from July 6th to August 20th, except there is a date, July 20th, that there'll be no programming that day, Monday through Friday, and the program is available 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now remember, there is a morning Department of Education component and an afternoon DYCD offering that are the two parts of the same day. But you can expect, if you, for example, are a working parent like we are, that from 8 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon, there's going to be continuous programming for K through 5. For 6 to 8, from July 6th to August 12th, except July 20th, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4. And then for our high school students, July 6th through August 13th, except again, July 20th, Monday through Fridays, flexible schedule, but you can expect at least 5 hours a day of Summer Rising programming. For students with 12-month IEPs, those who go to a District 75 or specialized school, from July 2nd, so note it's earlier, through August 13th, except July 5th and July 20th, Monday through Friday, from 8:10 in the morning to 2:40 in the afternoon, similar to what you probably have experienced during the school year. And you have an option to stay for the extended day. For students with 12-month IEPs, or extended school year, that's what ESY means, extended school year, District 1 through 32, July 2nd through August 13th, again, except July 5th and July 20th, Monday through Friday, 8:10 to 2:10, and an option to stay for the extended day. So those are the dates. And again, we're going to send you this information afterwards. So if you're concerned about getting the slides, we will send the slides later so you can have the dates.
And another question that came up is some people are hearing different dates from their school or from their CBO. This is, as you can probably tell, cut and paste from the school's DOE website. This is the information that we got. I would keep asking, if you're getting something that really contradicts with this, like there's no Fridays, I would go up the chain. So we're going to go through what is the chain later, but try to keep pushing because this seems like it got rolled out as the ideal, and then DOE figure it out, and then hey, CBO figure it out. there are a lot of moving pieces, and we're hearing a lot of questions, and the questions that are in the chat, I think, or in the Q&A are really reflective of that.
I took a look at the Q&A. There's a couple of questions that I want to answer. So the general questions is, can you apply to any summer rising program, even if it's not your home school? I don't see any reason why not, although more likely than not, you're going to be assigned to a program in your home school. But when we go over the application, you'll see that you can apply to a lot of different programs. So the answer is yes, you can apply. We're not 100% sure that you might get in, but I see no reason why not if you're interested in a specific program, or if you really like a CBO that's running a program in a different school than your own, or for whatever other reason. Okay, so what we have heard to date. So the Department of Education says that, leaving me in suspense, Kim.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting, sorry. I'm having trouble here. Here we go.
That all students will have an opportunity to participate and no student will be turned away. However, we are hearing families say that some schools don't have a program yet, and some programs may not be able to accommodate students with disabilities. In general, if you hear problems, you can call us. Our phone number is on the slide. If you have questions about summer rising, they've also given a specified email address, summer@schools.nyc.gov. You can always email them and copy us, and we'll be more than happy to track that request that you've sent. But generally, some schools haven't developed a program yet, but they're adding programs continuously as they're, working through creating this new summer rising programming. And programs that say that they can accommodate, we really want to hear about those programs that say that they can't accommodate students with disabilities. And for those, we absolutely encourage you to let us know. Okay. Now, transportation is still a work in progress, so you can expect the Department of Education to offer transportation to and from the Department of Education site. So from your home to the Department of Education site, or to the community-based organization. There is little bit of a wrinkle, and that is that the return trip from the final late day may not be available to all. That means that the Department of Education will transport a child to a Department of Education program and from a Department of Education program, but not necessarily from the after school portion, the CBO, community-based organization program, the partner program. So that is something that we're still working on. Trying to figure out exactly how it is that the Department of Education is going to return children back to their homes. But for now, for those of you who are in general education and receive and usually pick up their children from school, you should expect to do the same at the end of the programming date. So it should be about the same.
We're going to cover special ed transportation later. There's a lot of questions. What the DOE is saying and what we think is legal appear to be two different things. So we are going to cover that later. I know that has already come up a few times.
Right, that's correct. And you should receive basically what you're receiving during the school year. You want to go back a little bit. And remember that for IEP, for students with IEPs, we're going to cover that a little bit more because it's trickier. And I'm going to drop some information in the chat box as to how you can request, when Kim discusses it, alternate afternoon drop-off and busing exceptions. You may have other rights if you have a child with an IEP, or if you're living in temporary housing, or for other special circumstances. Okay, you should have. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the general tip. Maybe you're about to say the same thing. Is put it in writing. Put it in writing now, even if the school is saying no, we don't do that. No busing. Make sure that you're putting it in writing and writing to them and writing up the chain. The worst that can happen is they say no. But as we're trying to explore how, what they're required to do and trying to see if there's some movement on this, hopefully that will move, because obviously getting to summer rising and getting home from summer rising is a huge barrier for a lot of students in New York City.
That's right. And we've gotten a suggestion to mention that you should apply for transportation for next year, because presently as quickly as possible, because remember, July 1st is the start of the new year. So it's unclear if current transportation without another request will continue without a new application, which makes sense. All right, let's go to find your school summer location. All right, so if you are interested in researching, and this is for kindergarten through 8th grade, and to find your current school's summer location, so it might be that your school is undergoing renovations and it's closed and they have assigned another site or somewhere else where your child may be able to attend, or to look at what's available. The Department of Education has a list of school program locations by borough. And these are all live links that I'm going to put in the chat later on. You can also go to the Department of Education, the New York City Department of Education Summer Rising page to be able to get this information. But let's look at the Bronx, which is the next slide. If you click on the school program location by borough, you're going to get this document that gives you the school name. So in this case, for it's kind of tiny, but you can probably see. So District 707. For the Bronx, which is X, and then the name of the school. So PS1, for example, 07, X01. It's going to tell you in the second column, the grade levels that they're serving. In the third column, the grade levels they're serving. And the big column in the middle that has the very top lines, it tells you what programs they are, the Summer Rising program address. And then finally, what Summer Rising programs are going to be partnering with that school so that you have an idea of who's going to be offering the after school portion of the Summer Rising program. So it could be Catholic Charities, it could be the YMCA, it could be a number of different organizations. And then the links will take you to what to do next, which is what we're going to be talking in just a minute about. And next slide, please. As a reminder, for K through 8, the Summer Rising programs, K through 5, July 6th through August 20th, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. And for grades 6 to 8, July 6th through August 12th, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4. Okay, except on July 20th. Now,
and there are different days for students with disabilities that we'll go through, or for students with 12-month programming. We're going to get into that.
I should have highlighted that this is for 10-month students for the most part. But in general, how to apply. Let's go to the next slide. It's a two-step process. The first thing you want to do if you haven't done it yet, and this is all online, we have not seen any sort of paper or in-person or call-in way of doing this, and we're still looking, but we haven't found it. For those of you who are not comfortable with applying online, my suggestion would be to contact your school directly to ask if there is a way to do so. We have not seen a way to do this other than applying online. So the first step is to create a NewYorkCity.gov account, and I'll put the link later in the chat. And when you create the account, and we'll go to the first to that piece exactly. When you click on that link, you go straight into this back to this page, the create an account page. There you go. So you create an account. It's actually quite simple to create the account. You don't need that much information. Once you create the account, you get a link, a confirmation email sent to you. You confirm your email address and you forget about this. The next step that you're going to take is next slide. Wait. You're going to go to the DYCD website, to the Summer Rising program, and you're going to check the box and you're going to complete the application and submit. You cannot complete an application and submit unless you have already created a New York City account. By the way, this is not the same account as your New York City Department of Education account, the My Student account. This is a complete different system. So you do have to create a program. So here, in this case, this is where your landing page. And you'll see two things that are important when you first go into your DYCD Summer Rising portal. The first, if you click on it, is there's a Google Translate button that will translate the page for those of you who need language support. And then the second thing is that gray button in the corner, I think, Kim, is the sign in. You want to sign in right away with that login information that you created with your New York City account. And once you sign in, if we go to the next slide, now it's personalized. Over here in the corner, you see it says, "Hi, Liliana." The next thing that you want to do is, if you want, you can start researching right away. But the next thing that you want to do is to click on dashboard. As you can see, I actually started researching before I clicked on dashboard, and that was a mistake of mine. So I think, Kim, if you click, you'll see I wrote Washington Heights in the search because I wanted to search by neighborhood and I wanted to search Washington Heights. But what you really should need to do is to go straight to your dashboard. And this is what your dashboard is going to look like. That's the next slide. So click again, Kim, so they can see two things that I highlighted. Okay, perfect. So on the back, you see the first one on top, it says your dashboard. That is what you're going to see when you come back. You're going to see the darkened view. And on the bottom, circled, you'll see add applicant. You click on add applicant, and then you're going to add your children. It's not a lot of information that they're asking for. You click on, relationship, my child, first name, last name, date of birth, and that's pretty much, all the information that you're going to need, sex at birth, etc. You fill that up, you have your dashboard ready, you have your applicants ready, and then you go into the next slide, which is how to research the programs. And Kim, would you mind clicking on so that we can get some of the highlighted pieces? So first, make sure that summer rising is checked off so that you're looking at summer rising programs. And then there is where it says hide filter on the right of the screen. You can click on that to then narrow down your search. In this case, I said elementary schools. And I also put a zip code 10001, which is where Advocacy for Children is located. And then I hit search. And that's the next one. So for where Advocacy for Children is located, it was actually very unsatisfying because there was only one selection for that neighborhood, and very, kind of not that much happening over there. So I guess that makes sense. But I wanted to show you then some of the pieces here. Kim, if you wouldn't mind clicking so that we can see. First, you can see that there is a map. So if you want to see, in theory, you should be able to take a look at where this program is located to see how convenient it is for you. But you can also see a list form, which is what we're seeing now. Next, this program is going to be operating in July through August with the Police Athletic League. And you see that, click again, Kim. And on the top, we like this program, we're going to add it to our list. So if you like it, add it to the list, and this is what happens. Then you check off applicants. So in my case, I only wrote myself as the applicant. So click on the applicant, but if you have multiple children, then click on the child or children that you're interested in applying for this program. And then you click apply. All right. And what happens when you click apply is that, and you can then go back to doing research to do this again and again and again, because all of the programs that you're applying for are then archived in your dashboard. You go back to your dashboard and then you see all these programs and you click on the ones that you want to apply. And when you hit apply, then this screen pops up. And this screen is one single application for all of your selected programs. So it will ask you for a lot of information. As you can see, there's about 8 steps to be able to fill it up. But it's only one application for all the programs. And by the way, if you change your mind and you don't really want to apply to a program that you had saved, it's very easy to delete the program and to just remove the application, okay? So that part, you just go back to your dashboard and you check off, not interested anymore, remove the program, and it's done. But that is how you apply to summer rising. And once the applications are out, again, you can apply to programs that are not necessarily affiliated to your school. And we're not sure what the eligibility is going to be for, priorities are going to be given to ongoing continuing students, or if there's any sort of priority. We don't know, but there is no harm done if you're really interested in a program to apply to it. And that's for kindergarten through 8th grade for 10-month students. Let's talk a little bit about summer rising in high school. Now, for kindergarten through 8th grade, the summer rising program is per application, so you apply to these programs. For high school, it's a little bit different. First, the dates, July 6th through, oops, Kim, July 6th through August 13th. Next slide. I think one more or two more. There we are. July 6th through August 13th, except for July 20th. Remember, flexible scheduling Monday through Friday, at least 5 hours per day is what they should be offering. But the application is that the high schools themselves will reach out to students to discuss what options they might have and what interests they might have for summer. Remember, Summer Rising is not a mandated program. It is an optional program, but it is an opportunity for high school students to make up courses that they failed to pass, complete courses that have NX, so courses in progress or incomplete, to participate in academic acceleration, and also to combine with work, internship, and the Summer Youth Employment Program. Of course, for those of you who know, the Summer Youth Employment Program, the applications have already ended, but some students will be participating in that programming. And so that is going to be incorporated into the Summer Rising High School programming. The program can be in person. It can also be remote, but it can be remote depending on the subject area and the community needs is what the Department of Education is saying. If you do not hear from the school and you have a high school student or a rising high school student, because we're unsure as to whether or not 8th graders are going to continue in their 8th grade school over the summer, or if you're going to be entering the 9th grade school, contact the school to find out if you do not hear from them, or if you want to know about their summer options. Okay. And then finally, for me, before we get into questions, if you're not a Department of Education student, if you attend a private school, a parochial school, as long as you're a New York City resident, even if you're not a Department of Education student, you have a right to Summer Rising program if you choose to participate. You should apply to a neighborhood program, so something that's close to you. But as I said, we're not really quite sure what the priority levels are going to be or how it is that children are going to be assigned to a specific program. So apply to programming that makes sense to you. And now let's get into some of these questions. Let's see. District 75 will be coming up in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one question that has come up a few times in a few different ways, and it's wonderful to get all these questions. We may end up answering some of them in the next thing, and I apologize for screwing up some of the slides. It was me trying to answer the questions, and that was not, my computer didn't like that. But one of the questions that's come up a few times is, what if you can't do this online? That's such a great question. It's something that Advocates for Children has been pushing on throughout this whole pandemic. And it's really important, obviously, for the DOE to have multiple ways for people to apply. I would have a parent call 311, talk to their school. If their child is going in person, go in person. A lot of these CBOs are already operating as Learning Bridges sites or as other sites. And so you can go in person, and at least you should be able to get a phone number from somebody so you could call, and just keep pushing on that. And if you have trouble with that, call Advocates for Children and we can try to help you advocate. A lot of questions about flexibility of programs, half days, it being different days. We don't know the specifics, unfortunately, to that. We're giving you what we know. Actually, we don't know anything. What we know that the DOE has said, let's put it that way. We know what the DOE has said. We've heard Monday to Friday. People are saying, hey, it's not Fridays. I think that you're going to have to keep asking and going up the chain and keep checking on the DOE website. I think this is obvious, to state the obvious, this is being developed right now. In terms of a lot of the questions about special ed, I promise you I'm going to get into that now. We know at Advocates for Children presentations, there's a lot of parents of kids with disabilities and professionals who work with students with disabilities, so we will get into that. Anything else that I'm missing? I think, Liana, you covered some of the ones about researching things.
Yes, but I have a couple that I probably can answer really quickly. The first, if you can apply to multiple programs or programs that are not your home school, the site allows you to do that. It permits you to do it. I see no reason why you shouldn't if you're interested in a program. So because you can apply to multiple sites at the same time, if you really want one site over or are interested in a site, I don't see any reason why you couldn't. We're not sure when notification, as Kim had mentioned earlier, is going to come out, or if there's a deadline for notifying parents. if you are, the best we can tell you is to contact the program that you're interested in to see what their application schedule looks like and where you're going, when you're going to hear, what your opportunities are for attending, and to verify and certify that you can attend. Okay. Let's see. Do kids have to stay the entire summer, or are they allowed breaks? Do they need to stay the entire day as well? We're not sure about the entire summer. I mean, the Department of Education has said that they expect this to be a full-time, full-day program. I'm sure that as you create your schedule, schools were allowed to, for certain flexibility. Remember, there are two components to this program. There's the academic component and the after-school component. So the Department of Education and the DYCD. We're not 100% sure. I'm sure as we get day to day, things will become clearer.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, just to go back to the ideals of this, I think this was rolled out as a, mayoral ideal, which is wonderful, that all students in New York City, doesn't matter where you go to school, should have, a robust summer program given the year we've all just lived through. That's a great ideal. And then the practicalities of it are what's still being worked out. So I think the question about what if I can only go to part of it, I think that's probably going to be discretionary, right? If by part you mean half and they really don't seem to have enough spots, then maybe they're going to try to say, well, this isn't right for you, or we want to prioritize other students. On the other hand, the ideal is all students. So, everybody should have a right to go to a program. The devil is in the details, and we're trying to take you through a lot of those details now. I think I probably do need to keep moving because we have a lot in the next slides. And the goal in the next slides is to tell you what the DOE has said and some ideas for researching on your own and pushing back, to be honest, because a lot of it will be, well, my school told me that they don't have a summarizing program. How you can push back, how you can ask questions, and a lot of that will depend on, what pieces of it apply to you. Are you talking about a student with a disability? Are you talking about a kindergarten student? Are you talking about a high school student? So we're going to hopefully give you some of those tips.
Okay, and then I am going to let Kim speak, but please be on the lookout in the chat for a whole bunch of links to different things that I spoke about. Okay. All right, Kim, you're on. Yeah,
and please keep your questions coming. At the end, there is going to be an evaluation form. There'll be a link to it in the chat too. Please fill it out, not just because we really like to know how things are going, but because if you have other questions or other ideas, we'd like to have you raise that there. If we don't get to all the questions today, I think what we can try to work on would be something on our website, something that we can email out. If you, upon request, that answers some of these. We'll try to group them together. So these questions are really good. Okay, so multilingual learners. Hold on one second. Okay, so multilingual learners are, so students that speak another language. It's language supports are supposed to be provided by both the DOE and the CBO. That's supposed to be. I mean, we've heard a real range of things. Schools are supposed to provide, if there are students who speak other languages, they're supposed to provide English as a new language teacher to support them. And I think in some grades it's saying that they do have some digital materials. Our advice would be ask now if you have a student, if your child needs language supports or you're working with a child who needs language supports. Ask now, ask in writing, ask up the chain. I know I keep saying that, but I think it's going to be really important to advocate to try to make sure that you can get the supports that should be provided. This is true, the language access rights and translation and interpretation. This is just generally true, but we thought it would be an important time to bring it up. That, all DOE forms and meetings are supposed to be held in the parent's preferred language in these top languages. So they're supposed to translate forms and notices. They're supposed to provide interpretation for meetings. So that's something to keep in mind and to ask for. Okay, so students with disabilities. This is sort of a very quick overview of some of the programs we're going to talk about. We're going to focus first on 12-month IEP programs. I know this has come up already in the chat. And just to clarify, there are 3 different kinds of 12-month IEP programs. There's District 75, there's ESY, which I think is less well known, and that stands for Extended School Year, and we'll cover that in a bit, and then Related Services only. Then, of course, there's students who don't have 12-month IEP programs or related services, but do have IEPs or 504 plans, and also are entitled to get supports and services during summer rising. So just to focus first on 12-month District 75 IEP students. The dates, this is a little bit earlier than the dates that we put up before. It's July 2nd to August 13th, except for July 5th and July 20th. Actually, for the 12-month programs, those dates apply to each type. The times are Monday to Friday, 8:10 to 2:40, with the option to stay for the extended day. Somebody already said there's no CBO attached to my D75 program. That's a great example of a question to email Summer Rising or the summer@schools.nyc.gov and special education. If you're not getting an answer that works for you, contact AFC. Because the CBO programs are supposed to be open to students with disabilities. In fact, one of the main reasons for Summer Rising was to try to focus on the kids who had the hardest time keeping up with school during COVID. And there should have been a survey. I already saw in the chat some people didn't get it. Contact your school if you did not receive a survey. For example, my son, who kind of gets 12-month programming and kind of gets 12-month related services, I got 2 different surveys, but one I just got, and I just got it from a teacher at the school. The other one I got earlier. So then 12-month extended school year programs. These are IEP programs that are 12 months that are for students that are not in D75. It's something that AFC has been advocating for a long time, but it's relatively recent that they've actually provided them. So I don't know the exact number, but it's a pretty small number of students. The standard for ESY programs is that you have to substantially regress without them. And that's actually the same thing is true for D75. But the DOE traditionally has said if you're in a District 75 program, so you have a disability that requires that much support, of course you're going to regress without the support. So it's sort of more of, they're obviously going to give you 12-month services. Not everyone in D75 has 12-month services, but it's more like the default than not. The reverse is true in community school. But as you know, if you're a parent or a professional working with, or if you have a student with disability, obviously there's a real range, and the DOE has pushed a lot more for inclusion of students with disabilities in D1 through 32 schools, in their local schools. But they might have a more significant disability, or they might have a disability that would mean that they're going to regress if they don't get something over the summer. All kids regress a little, but we're talking about substantial regression. What that means is a whole other training and really has to do with evaluations and what you can show. But assuming that you have an ESY program, those dates are the same as D75. It's July 2 to August 13th. They're slightly shorter days, so it's 8:10 to 2:10. You should have a CBO program where it's usually at a different school. So if your child is one of the ones that have already had this, you probably already know this. The first place I found, and I'm going to go through this in a bit, is a really complicated set of memos and tables. It's on the DOE website. It's not made for parents or professionals. It's made for schools about how much funding they're going to get. But in those, you can get information. So there's something called a school allocation memo that actually has the sites for the extended school year programs. Oops. Okay. So the next slide is 12-month related services only students. And this is much more common than the ESY. For this, you're going to get it's the July 2nd to August 13th. You should have received an email survey in mid-April. At least that's when I got mine. This is the one that they've sent in the past. If you have related services for 12 months, you're probably used to seeing it, where they'll send you a survey and say, hey, it's varied every year. One year they just said, do you want related services? Do you want them at a site? One year I got it and they had specific sites. This year it just said, do you want in person? Do you want remote? And that's it. You should be getting a location soon, but what does soon mean? Anywhere from like tomorrow to the next month? I'm not sure. And what they've said on their website is that they are trying to make sure that the related services sites are connected with CBOs so that your child could go to a summer rising program, get their PT and speech, you know, let's say in the morning maybe, and then do the CBO program in the afternoon. They supposedly are going to have a lot more programs this year, but we have not seen the list and don't know. One thing that they do not advertise is if it really doesn't work for you. So for example, my son uses a wheelchair. In prior years, they've offered something that was in a different district without transportation or something that was in an inaccessible building. That really doesn't work. You can ask for RSAs if you have the ability to find a provider. Obviously, an RSA, if people don't know, it's a voucher that allows you to find a provider. Sometimes it's hard to find a provider who will take an RSA. So if your goal is to get your child services, I would explore all options, but probably it's a little bit easier to get one at a DOE site if that can work for you. I think I just covered this, but you also can sign up for summer rising programming through the DOE. Okay, so if you need supports to attend, and this is all students with disabilities, you're supposed to be given the support you need in all summer rising programs. Now, the reason I have 504 in parentheses there is, for example, with the DYCD programs, this is not clearly covered under the IDEA as a legal right. It is covered under 504 or the ADA, and I'm going to go through that in a minute, that they can't discriminate against you because you have a disability. So if you need a para, for example, to participate in a summer rising program, for whatever reason, your child has a health para, they have to provide that health para to you under 504, the ADA. That's a typical, requirement. It does get a little bit complicated. Is that true in any program? Not necessarily, but for DOE programs where they provide the para during the school year, I think that's pretty clear. What's also clear is that this is a bit fuzzy. And so we are hearing from different people that CBOs have said different things. It's really important for you to ask the school and the CBO for what you think your child needs in writing as soon as possible. And if you don't get an answer or they say no, contact special education at schools.nyc.gov. And if you still don't get an answer or they say no, please contact us. We handled a lot of calls about learning bridges this past year, where students with disabilities, even though they were supposed to be prioritized, were actually having a really hard time getting the supports they needed. And those are the kind of cases that we're hoping we can try to help parents with. Okay, so this is the slide I was just talking about, but there's the IEP, which is covered under IDEA. These are, federal laws. 504 plan, which covers the right to not be discriminated against in schools, and then the ADA generally, which says, a public establishment can't discriminate against a student with a disability. Now, ADA and 504 have a reasonableness standard, not to get, this is not going to be a legal training, but, I don't know that you can't really ask an airline to provide a para for you, for example. They're going to say that's too expensive. If you need to have an aide, then maybe there's a discounted ticket that you can get for the aide, or you don't have to pay, but it's a different standard than the IDEA, which is about your right to access school. So that's the highest, right. But just to go through where these, how this would work out, your child's disability and their needs should be described in the IEP or the 504 plan. Now, most students with IEPs do not have 504 plans. I've heard mixed things about whether or not it's a good idea to have one or not. I think your child's needs should be described adequately in the IEP. And then the summer rising program should provide accommodations and supports to students with disabilities. And they should know what those needs are, because if they're the school serving that child, they created the IEP. They know what needs they might have. And I think I just covered this, but publicly funded programs can't discriminate. So there is a really clear right to, equal access to these programs. But then exactly what the details are, which is, of course, as a parent of a child with a disability, what you need to know Look, I tried to get into a middle school after school program years ago. My son's in high school now, and they could not have been more lovely. They said they would welcome him, but it was run by a bunch of high school kids. And my son is quadriplegic, has incredible needs, uses AAC. And I talked to them and I just was like, I get that you're saying it's fine, but I don't feel safe. And maybe I could have fought more for different services, but I just decided this is not okay. But I think a lot of us are trying to make those decisions. I would push pretty hard now because Summer Rising is a lot different than the after school program I was looking at. Summer Rising is something that was put out as a city initiative to really try to help students who have had a really hard year. So there's a really strong public policy, and part of that policy is to include kids with disabilities. So this would be the time to push, and to push now because it's the end of May. We were hoping that by the time we did this training, we would have all the answers. We felt like it was a little bit late, but if we did it later, we would have more answers. We have some answers. We have a lot more than 2 weeks ago, but it's still a lot of questions, and I know you all do too. Okay. So transportation, this is one of the big questions that's come up. I don't know how many of you also did the DOE Family Forum last week. This was the one that we saw over and over and over again in the Q&A about what about my child who has busing on their IEP and I need busing to get them to this Summer Rising thing. The DOE has said no transportation from the CBO. So, you know, what Liliana covered earlier. So your child has 12 months busing, is in a D75 or ESY or even just a community school program, but then they go to the CBO program at Compass or Beacon or YMCA, whatever, and you need to get them home. DOE is saying no transportation from the CBO. That's the one question and answer that we saw that we were like, that doesn't sound right, because federal laws and regs, and I apologize, I said I wasn't going to get real legal, but here I really wanted to quote the language of the memo, and the memo is in that little hyperlink, which will get sent around, that basically you have, that the transportation, if it's needed to give your child equal opportunity to participate, they need to provide it. And so I think that that's something that is really clear in this memo. To be honest, it is not something that the DOE has traditionally done. At my own child's elementary and middle school, this was a real issue. There were a lot of kids who used wheelchairs. They really could not take public transportation to get home. And because of that, a lot of them could not access the after-school programs. They just couldn't, or any of the extracurriculars, the teams, the clubs. That's not legal, I think. And I think that based on this, that's also not legal. But this is an area where what the DOE is saying right now and what we think the law is not the same thing. There's a lot of other areas where it's a lot grayer, right? Your child has a small class. You have a right to a small class in the CBO program. I think you're really going to have to get into what your child's needs are and how can they be accommodated. I don't think the CBO programs do not have to implement your IEP exactly, but they do have to accommodate your child's needs. And so where the line is with those two things is going to be very individual. But going to problem solving, because we do anticipate that a lot of people may have some problems. And we were thinking of transportation with this, but it really could apply in a lot of different areas. Obviously, start with the DOE, right? The school, make sure if you're talking to the teacher, go to the principal, go to the AP, find out who's the AP for the summer program and talk to them. Show, if you're talking about transportation, show them the memo, show them, say, what, I don't understand this. Email specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. I say that over and over again. I know they have sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't, but it is really important to, go up the chain in that way. You can also go to the superintendent because they are in charge of the school and ultimately, up the chain. That's how it goes. If that's not working, contact AFC. That link is to our website. You can call our helpline or you can email us. And if that doesn't work, you can go to, oh, I'm sorry, I need to hold on a second. Okay, I can't see the bottom, but I think what's on here is the New York Attorney General, and then SED and OCR. OCR is the Federal Office for Civil Rights, and you can file a complaint with them. The New York Attorney General is the same. And for those, you can file any discrimination claim. So if you are a parent of a child who speaks another language and they're not accommodating you in any way, you can file a complaint through here. If you feel like there's a race discrimination claim, you could file it here. Gender, whatever. Those are the discrimination offices handle discrimination claims. The New York State Education Department is, just education, and in that one you can also file. The problem, to be honest, let's say for transportation, obviously you could file a hearing for it, but as anybody who has ever had the misfortune to have to file a hearing probably knows, they're very slow. And so even if you filed it right now, the likelihood that it would get resolved through a hearing officer in time for summarizing is minuscule. It really almost none. Maybe you could settle the case, but it would be unlikely to get settled. That's the bad news. The good news is that a lot of the things we're talking about here, it's not about your right to a free and appropriate public education, which is what you typically are filing an impartial hearing about. It's about your right to access a summer program, which is really more about 504 anti-discrimination. For those claims, you don't need to go to a hearing. You can go straight to federal court. Now, filing in federal court is something that's pretty complicated. It's also pretty expensive. If you are low income, you can file forms to not have to, pay. There is supposed to be an office there that will help you file. But I got to be honest, it is pretty complicated. So please reach out to us if you feel like you're being discriminated against. You certainly can reach out to the OCR, SED, or New York Attorney General's office. I don't know what the timeline would be like on those, but I would just say it's a different and easier way. It's obviously free. You fill out an online complaint form, and maybe things would get resolved. Okay. Okay, so here's the super detailed part for the people who are still with me and want to try to figure out, well, how is this fair? How can I figure out what they're saying? These are one of my favorite parts of public information on the DOE. It's real complicated. It's also not necessarily legally binding. So I think what you're looking at now is, where does the money go to fund summer programs? So when they first announced all of this, what I kept looking at were these things called the SAMs, or the school allocation memos, because that's where any program that isn't like, the general school year program gets funded through these special allocation memos. And in that, something like summer programming, you can find out some details, not a lot, but at least what they're telling the schools, hey, we're going to fund you for this. I think there's some really telling things in the funding, or why I said follow the money. So I'm going to go through what they say for these different groups. But they do talk a little bit about summer supports, multilingual learners, students with ESY programs, ASD Nest Horizon. I know there were a lot of questions in the chat about that. I'll tell you what I know they said here. Pre-K programs, and then there's other programs like discovery programs or CTE programs that we're not going to cover here. But I think that even though they're tough to read, if you're in a situation where you feel like your child fits in one of these categories and the school isn't giving you what you need, it might be a way to ask at least a few more questions. Okay, so this is just a quick screenshot of what one of the tables looks like, the first table. God help you in understanding this, but you can see that it's the school, this is the school PS15 in District 1. I can see that through the location and how much money they're getting for the summer. Now, I don't know if they get money from other sources. One thing I would always love to understand is school funding a little bit better. All I can say is, you can see, hey, they got some money for this, and maybe that's something that you can ask CAP. Like, I see that you have a para that's funded, or professional development for a para. Like, I'm trying to ask for a para. Can you tell me why I can't get one? Just one idea in terms of researching things. They do include some general policies too. This is the one that I thought was the most interesting, which is that for schools to get the money, they have to have already been working with their supervisors. So at the borough community office, that's like a mid-level office at the DOE. And this should all be worked out by June 11th. It's the only time I've seen a date. And I feel like, well, if you've got to work out the money by June 11th, hopefully you have to work out all the details by June 11th. Now that may be aspirational of me, but I thought this was an interesting date that was in there, and I just wanted to point it out. Okay, so the supports generally, from what I can see, is that the SAMs say that they do support an assistant principal, one counselor per school, and this is different from mandated counseling. This is really about the fact that, going back to the ideal, the whole idea of summarizing is because we've all had a really tough year. And a lot of students have experienced extreme trauma, right? They've lost family members to COVID. They've had COVID themselves. It's, you know, they've gone through unemployment or really hard times. And that's what the counselor is supposed to be there for. There's also supposed to be an education para. In this part of the SAMs, it also says other paras as needed. So I know there was a parent who asked a question in the Q&A about, well, will my child get a para if it's on their IEP? I think you just have to make the argument, well, my child needs a para because of X, Y, and Z. And if they have a para on their IEP, it's a pretty good argument that they need a para. So that's how you would ask for one and try to push. They're also supposed to have professional development. I think one thing we really do worry about is, you know, a lot of the summer programs, not unlike summer school generally, you know, they don't really know how to support kids when it's a different program. So my child is in an ICT. At one point, he needed to take a summer school program for one class in English. His school was too tiny. They didn't have a summer school program, and there was no such thing as an ICT summer school program. I'm like, well, he needs that special ed teacher. How is a gen ed teacher going to know how to teach my kid? And so they were able to work out something that became, you know, was a match. They had special education teacher support to try to help accommodate and, you know, figure out the material and work with a general education teacher so that my son could be included. But I had to ask a lot for that. And I think that's the kind of thing that, you know, they do need some professional development time to make sure that the teachers know how to serve the students. Multilingual learners. Now, this is something where this language I found a little depressing because a lot of it is, you know, you should be able to use this, but it doesn't really seem to mandate it that much. But it basically is saying that if you have students who are multilingual learners at a school, they should be prioritized for English as a new language support, either co-taught or standalone. They do have some digital materials for grades 7 to 8, and that's through the Division of Multilingual Learners. And they're supposed to partner with CBOs, I thought that was interesting, who have experience working with multilingual students, right? So obviously your child speaks Spanish. There's a CBO where most of their programming is bilingual. That's a good fit. You know, if that's not a program that has any idea how to work with somebody who speaks another language, not a good fit. So trying to, you know, push through and try to make sure that this is going to work out. This is the place where you can see there is some funding for that. Literacy supports for students with disabilities. This is interesting. It's the only place in the SAMs where they have just general support for students with disabilities, other than the general SAMs, where they do have, this is, I think, a holdover from last year, where it was something that they are really trying to ramp up their literacy supports. So for 25 students with disabilities, they're supposed to have one special ed teacher to provide research-based literacy instruction for at least 30 minutes in a group that's 5 or fewer students. And they're also supposed to support the other teachers. Now that's great if your child, it's probably not enough, but it is a really good first step if your child does have a reading-based disorder. It doesn't say anything about other disabilities, but this is basically a recognition that it's important to use real research-based literacy instruction, not just somebody who has a special ed degree, and to make it tailored to these kids. So that is something that is supposedly funded. If you have a child who has dyslexia, for example, and I would be pushing now and saying, do you have a literacy instructor this year? Who are they? How's that going to work? So ask now for that. Okay, ESY. I know I talked about this earlier, that it's about 12-month services to prevent substantial regression. So at least 30 days of the instruction is supposed to be focused on those skills that would otherwise regress. So that's just a little bit of a different standard than the July 2nd to August 13th. I actually did not count up how many days is that. It sounds like probably about 30. And then, you know, the thing that I think is the most telling on this is it's a pretty small number of schools. It's 19 schools citywide, and you can see where they are in the table 6, which is in the SAMs. So all these slides, I'm just basically trying to pull out some details that I thought were interesting from this otherwise kind of long, a little bit tough to read DOE memo that, to their credit, is not for us to all understand. It's for school principals to understand, but it is a really interesting place to get information. I know a lot of questions about ASD Nest Horizon. What it says in the SAMs, which may be really different from what you hear, is that it's skill-based support, 4 days a week, at least 4 weeks. Now, how does that match up with the fact that Summer Rising has different dates for kids with 12-month IEPs, 10-month IEPs? In the Horizon program, you might have a 12-month IEP. I would try to go for the longer of whatever the timeline is, but you should be at least able to get that. And it is supported by the central ASD team. There are supposed to be funding for teachers and paras and materials and related services. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, the other thing with ASD Nest is, from what I can see in the SAMs, it looked like this was funded. Part of it sounded like everybody in it, and then part of it just sounded like K through 8. So I'm pretty confused about what happens with ASD high school programs, but at least this is something for if you're K through 8, and it sounds like the majority of people at this training are K through 8, that might be helpful. Okay, preschool. I know there were some questions on preschool. This is something where it seems like it's not that different from regular years. They're basically saying it's only for students with 12-month IEPs. You're placed by the CPSE, and there's only 12 programs citywide. Now that doesn't, if you're in a center-based program, you should talk with them. Maybe that program would be continued. It often is. So just talk with whatever program you're in. But for the public school preschools, it sounds like it's a pretty small number. They did say in the announcement, all students, and all students certainly should include a preschooler. But I would just push and ask. And if you're not getting the answers, go up the chain to special education. And if that doesn't work, please contact ASC. Okay. Last but not least, there's summer meals programs. We know that they're available to all students who are not attending Summer Rising. If you're attending Summer Rising, you should get, all meals, breakfast and lunch. One thing that we were trying to find out but couldn't get an answer to is whether or not community meals, which have been available to date because of the pandemic, are ending. We couldn't see that. So there may be other ways to get free meals, but at least through schools, the summer meals are available if you're not attending a Summer Rising program. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation. I know we have a number of questions, and please fill out the evaluation. Liliana or Isabella, if you can put it in the chat, that would be great. And we'll try to just stay on and answer some more questions as you put it in. Hopefully this was helpful. I wish we had more concrete answers for you. Oh, okay, so one person said literacy instruction, 30 minutes per day or per week if have dyslexia. I think it said per day. And as I said before, the SAMs are not a mandate. They're what schools have an option to get funding for. A lot of the SAMs at the end of it says, if you don't use this, some of them are use it or lose it, and some of it are, if you don't use it, you can roll it over for the same purpose next year. I'm not exactly sure how that works. Also, if your child already has sets on their IEP and is mandated for summer school, you should be getting those sets. This is really more just extra literacy support. And so somebody has asked this question about your IEP is for a 12 to 1-to-1 community school class. Are they entitled to that during Summer Rising? That's a really good question. We went back and forth. This is exactly a question that's right on the line in terms of what does the law require, especially because it's the DOE providing this program. What's reasonable? I don't know that you can ask for the CBO to have a small class. On the other hand, you can make sure that you might be able to. It really depends on what your child needs. What can they handle? I think you should push as much as possible and describe your child's needs. What happens when they're in a larger group? I think a lot of what the city was anticipating is people asking for a paraprofessional for their child if they're not going to be able to, do well in a large group. sort of understanding that there's no way to make it be a smaller group. I would push back on that and ask if para is a very restrictive option. On the other hand, if that works for you, if you think a one-to-one para for your child in a bigger group could work, push for that. I think it's very hard to answer that individually, except to say, you know, as far as I know, they're not implementing the IEP exactly in the summer rising programs. You can certainly ask for whatever it is you think you need from the IEP in the summer rising programs. I do think it's a really good question. If you're mandated for academic summer school, then I think they really should be providing the 12-to-1. To date, I don't think they do. And they also tend not to mandate summer school for kids in the small classes. That's a bit problematic. And to think about, you know, do you really need summer school because your child had a tough year with this one subject? Do you need summer school? Do you really need something like ESY? Actually, most of the kids that we see recommended for ESY when they're in a D1 through 32 school are students who were in small classes, self-contained classes, and they need a lot of support. And so that's a typical student who would be recommended for the very small number, I can't remember what I said, 19 or something, of ESY programs that are across the city. I think that's a program that should be used a lot more. And for that, keep in mind what you're showing is that your child would substantially regress without that level of support. Okay, so somebody is saying they're still confused. You know what, about whether or not they have to attend full day? I think, Liliana, the reason you're confused is I think we said a few different things. My understanding is you should be able to ask for just the DOE portion. I do not think you can ask for just the DYCD portion, but to be honest, you know what, I'm not entirely sure, so ask. I think that, you know, especially since you can go to one DOE program and go to a different CBO program, I don't know why they would make you do both, but I think that's something where it's not so clear. Will there be ICT settings? Good question. I don't know. I mean, I think ICT is a lot easier than small class. I think if your child needs a special education teacher support, you should ask for it. And then figure out, you know, do you need it all day? There's not exactly an equivalent for summer camp of ICT. Same as the 12-to-1 class. If your child is mandated for summer school, I mean, that was my situation with my son where he needed an ICT. He really needed the special education support. They figured out a way to get him a special ed teacher to support the gen ed teacher in summer school. If you're doing this because it's not mandated and you don't have 12-month programming, it's a little bit tougher. I think they should have 12-month ICTs. I really do. And I think that it would help a lot of students, quite apart from COVID and the pandemic. But I think that it's an area of improvement for the DOE.
Kim, I wanted to interrupt you just 1 second while we take questions because we wanted to launch our final poll. It's just a
absolutely.
feedback poll. And then we'll continue answering questions as you type them up and let us know. Kim, there's another one about if there are schools listed that have extended school year programming, where can I find the schools that have USSY? Did you answer that one? I'm sorry.
You know what, I did, but that was the section when I was talking like an auctioneer, so I apologize. It's in one of the tables in the SAMs. And so if you click on the SAMs thing, which I know you don't have yet and can see, you can also Google literally SAMS, NYC DOE. Make sure you're looking for fiscal year 22. Okay. Yeah, I will. And it's in one of the tables. So, yeah, so somebody else is asking about it. Okay, I'm going to go look for it and put it in the chat.
Kim, I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, I'm sharing my screen. I can't do it. I'm sorry. And please take this poll. And we will also, if you can take the survey that went on, there's a little bit more, there's a few more questions in there. It'd be really helpful. It's a really good question. Somebody's asking. about what happens if you get a promotion in doubt letter and you can't get into a nearby program. I would keep pushing for that, because with a promotion in doubt, you should be able to go to summer school. So I would go up to assuming it's a child without a disability, you might want to go up to the superintendent and push on that, and try to see. Somebody else is saying their principal has stated they don't know if they'll have the staff. That's a really, really good question. And that's the same thing that my son's principal has told us, that they have no special ed teachers this summer. He's in a smaller high school, and it's a disappointing answer to me. I also have to say, given what we've all gone through this year, his principal is amazing to me, because she actually came up with a pretty awesome remote program that worked. And part of it was not exactly in alignment with what DOE guidance was, but it was in alignment with what the students needed. And so I think that that's a really tough question. I looked at, his school. I'm like, they get way too little money to actually start a summer program. And with who? If they don't have any of the usual special ed teachers, what are they supposed to do? I don't have the answers. I just understand how that could be really hard. I think what I would say is, and this is sort of a general thing, that when you're hitting an issue with the school where they're like, we don't have the resources, keep in mind the DOE has the resources that school may not. The problem is how the DOE is rolling out Summer Rising is to delegate it all to the schools in terms of the actual programming and supports. I do think they are now actively working behind the scenes in central DOE to try to fill some of the gaps. So for a principal who says they don't have the staff, that's a gap, right? The DOE has the staff, theoretically, hopefully. Ask now, push back on the principal, or say, hey, I'm going to go up to the superintendent. Is that okay with you? If you have a good relationship with the principal, this is just life, but I wouldn't, don't stab anybody in the back. Make sure that they are standing next to you and you say, I'm going to go try to help you find the resources or to get them for my child. I'm going up the chain. And so most principals actually welcome that, because they're being told to do something and they do not see how they can do it. So I think pushing back makes a lot of sense. Is sets allowed in person again, or is it remote? I think that's actually a great question, but it's in person should be allowed. Remote should also be allowed if it's mandated. I think, I'm trying to remember because it was mid-April, but when I took the survey about related services, I think it did say, do you want remote or in person? Yeah, so somebody is saying postings for teachers that have applied haven't been posted yet, so it's hard to know. I mean, this is a tricky thing. This is not unlike when we all had to make those choices about blended or in-person last fall, I guess. Wow, I can't remember when it was. Yeah, last fall. And the DOE was trying to figure out, how do you plan how many teachers you need without knowing what students are doing what? I think that's where we're at now. And so it's really important to apply, to make your needs known, your desires known, and then hopefully they can post if they need to. Mandated summer school. What happens if we choose not to do summer? You can do that. Your child will be retained. It sounds like you want your child to be retained. So just be clear about that. And then, you're not holding a spot, and that's okay. It does mean, if they said you will have to go to summer school or your child will be retained, you can say, okay, I'm okay with my child being retained. I think that would work better. And the only thing I would say with your child being retained is make sure that if your child has a disability or might have a disability, make sure that you understand all the supports and services. Have they been provided? Do they need extra help? I know this whole year was an entirely different year, so there's lots of reasons why kids were behind. Okay. All right, I think we're done. Liliana, is that everything?
I think so.
Oh, somebody put in the surveys. Thank you so much, Megan Thomas, for putting in the link to the surveys for the summer program. That was helpful.
So again, if you guys, thank you so much for listening to us. And if you guys have additional questions that come up later on, feel free to call us or email us, and we're around, and we'd be delighted to try to answer your questions. Also, if you have things that you want to report to let us know that you have experience, particularly with receiving mandated special education services or mandated summer instruction, we are all ears. By all means, let us know.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll give it just another minute, but
If we learn
looks like
more
the Q&A.
information in the future, we may have some updated version of this webinar or another type of way to communicate. So please be on the lookout for that as well. Remember, we are going to be sending you a PowerPoint presentation and also the links that I included in the chat so that you can use them.
Yeah, and we definitely will try to keep any new updates we'll try to put on our website. Okay, thank you so much, all. We're going to say goodbye now.